Hello, everyone, and welcome to MOS Live. Today, we are talking with Museum of Science educators from the Live Animal Center all about aquatic animals. My name is Sarah. My pronouns are she and her, and I'll be keeping an eye out for all of your questions today. Thank you for those of you who are tuning in on Facebook, but please note that we're not able to share your comments from that platform with our educators. For everyone who are here on Zoom, just press the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to ask your questions. If you would like a shout out, if we end up asking your questions, please leave your name and age. If you'd like to see captions, you can click on Closed Captions button at the bottom of your screen and select Show Captions. So now I would like to invite my first museum educator and animal friend to introduce themselves, and we will get started.
Hi, everyone. I'm Liz, the assistant curator from the Live Animal Center. Helping me out a little bit later will be Corey, our invertebrate keeper. Now, you have a quick view of our first aquatic animal. Now, I just want everyone to kind of watch this animal for a couple seconds. A lot of times people are really confused about this animal. They're not sure exactly what it is. I often hear guesses of eel. I've heard guesses of worm, snake. Corey actually thinks it looks like a sock puppet. Some of you might agree with that. So this is actually an animal called a caecilian. Now, caecilians are amphibians. So this is not a fish. It's not an eel. It's not a snake. It is an amphibian. So relatives of this animal include things like frogs, toads, salamanders, and newts. Now, caecilians are a very unique type of amphibian. They're in their own group within that amphibian class. Now, they are legless and worm-like in appearance, as you can tell. Now, there are just about 200 different species of caecilians. That might seem like a lot, but when we compare that to the thousands of different kinds of frog species we know about, it's really not that many. Now, caecilians are very elusive. They're very hidden and very unknown. Scientists actually don't know that much about caecilians. Some of the things they do know, they know that they vary in size. So some kinds of caecilians are pretty tiny, no more than 3 inches in length at full size. The largest caecilian is over 5 feet long. This species that we're looking at right now is a pretty moderate, I would say relatively impressive size caecilian. They get about 2 feet in length, and this one is probably just about at that 2 feet in length. Now, a lot of caecilians actually are not aquatic. So obviously this one you're meeting now is really good at swimming, fully aquatic, but a lot of them actually live underground. They are burrowers. Common name for caecilians is actually worm salamanders, since they do spend a lot of time digging and burrowing underground. Although, as you can see, there are certainly aquatic species of caecilians as well. Now, this species is commonly called a Copse caecilian, and they are native to parts of South America. So you will find them in places like Peru, Bolivia. That's mainly where you will find them. And as I said, they do spend all of their time in the water. They are fully aquatic. They have a couple different features about them that make them good at swimming. They actually have a flat crest, hopefully you're able to see it on the back, that actually is movable and flexible and really helps them almost use it like a rudder as they're moving through the water. They do tend to swim in an eel-like fashion, and they are very good using that rudder. Ooh, good demonstration of it right now. Now, a couple other things about caecilians. They don't have great eyesight. Now, they do have pretty tiny heads and pretty tiny eyes. I know looking at this animal, it might be hard for you to even tell where the head and the tail is. So I'll give you a clue. The caecilian is swimming head first. So actually the smaller end of the body is the head of the caecilian. Now that you see how tiny that head is, the eyes are really, really tiny on that head. So they have really poor vision. The best they can do is sense the difference between light and dark. And that kind of makes sense since a lot of caecilians are underground. They don't really need to have the best vision. but they do have tentacles. So that really helps them. It's almost an extra sense on their face. Those tentacles are between their eyes and nostrils, and it helps them just kind of feel their way around. So that's another good thing that they have that they are able to use. Now, caecilians are carnivores, so they do eat other animals. You actually probably observed our caecilian here at the museum eating a couple things that Corey dropped into the tank a little while ago. Those are actually mysis shrimp. They will eat a lot of worms, aquatic insects. Their mouths are pretty small, as you can see, so they do tend to eat small animals. They'll also scavenge. They'll eat some things that they find that are already dead. Now I see we probably are already getting in a couple questions, so why don't I take some of those about our unusual caecilian?
Yes, absolutely. So you already sort of answered this question, which is from Emily, age 8, asked, what do they eat? Do they eat anything else in the wild besides what you mentioned?
Yeah, they definitely will eat some snails and mussels if they find dead remains of those animals and they're able to get that. Definitely insects, even other amphibian larvae, eggs of other animals, pretty much anything small that's meat that they can find in the water, they're probably going to give it a try and try to eat it.
Great. Now, our favorite question, does this animal have a name?
So it's interesting. I actually named this caecilian after our former senior curator here at the museum. So his name is Lou. Caecilians are one of his favorite animals, and amphibians are his favorite group of animals. So I thought it was only appropriate, since he really wanted us to get this caecilian at the museum, that we name it after him. So the caecilian's name is Lou.
Great. Where do caecilians like to live in the natural world? What is their habitat?
So this particular species is in South America, places like Peru, Ecuador, Brazil, and they do live in an aquatic environment. So rivers, streams, things like that. There are other kinds of caecilians that are also aquatic that will live in similar habitats, but then there's also lots of caecilians that aren't aquatic at all, and they live completely underground. Most of them live in pretty warm climates, places like South America. So we don't have any North American caecilians.
Great. Anton, age 8, wants to know, are those veins on the side of the body or not?
They are not veins. It's just kind of a natural part of the animal's body. A lot of times people think it looks like a worm, kind of how it's segmented like that. But no, it is not veins that you're looking at.
And in that, someone else asked, is it translucent?
It's not completely translucent. It's a very good term that you used. Yeah, you can't see completely through the animal and see its organs inside, but they are pretty light in color. They are that light gray, but not completely translucent.
Great. Lydia, age 4, asks, how do they breathe when they're underground?
That's a really great question. So amphibians can do gas exchange through their skin. So a lot of times, even if we think they're in a place where there's not much oxygen available, since they have so much more surface area that they're able to take in that oxygen, they can get those little bits that are down below the ground. So that's a really good question. Nice to think of something like that.
All right, Peyton, age 13, wants to know what they feel like.
So this particular animal, I have never actually touched. Believe it or not, they have toxic properties to their skin. So I wouldn't really touch him just in case if the toxins, I don't know, made me sick or not feel too great. But I've heard they are very slimy. And I have felt other amphibians. So I have touched frogs with my bare hands. So I imagine it would be kind of similar to that, wet and slimy. Another thing, the caecilian, since it's toxic, could potentially hurt me, but I also could potentially hurt the caecilian. Since these animals have bare skin, they do gas and water exchange through that skin. So anything that would be on my hands could go into the caecilian. So it kind of works both ways, that we have a very hands-off relationship.
Great. So Kalia in 4th grade wants to know how they lay eggs, and Anara, age 6, had the same question.
Great questions. So this kind of caecilian, this species, is something that is known as ovoviviparous. That is a big word. Basically what it means is the young develops inside the adult female and then comes out live. So it's sort of like an amphibian form of a live birth. So they don't actually lay eggs. And this isn't true across the board for all caecilians. There are some caecilian species that do lay eggs, much like most other amphibians. So they're kind of an interesting one. They usually only have 2 to 5 young at any time, but they do come out pretty developed.
Great. And how do the caecilians defend themselves, or do they have any natural predators?
So the main defense that they have is that they have toxic properties to their skin. So that would definitely deter things from eating it. Definitely any animals that are in the water would potentially eat one, especially when they're young. But they don't have too many predators. Again, a lot of the species live underground where there's less animals. And then the aquatic species tend to be pretty toxic. So they don't have too many predators to worry about.
Yara would like to know, how long do they live?
So not much is known about their lifespan in the wild, since they're pretty hard to study and they're pretty secretive. We know in zoo settings, they've been known to live up to 13 years. I've heard average is about 5 or 6 years. So probably about that in the wild too, but again, it's hard to know for sure.
All right. So thank you so much for sharing this animal with us. I am going to put up a screen of information about this animal while we get ready for our next animal. So feel free to take a screenshot of this or take a picture of it so that you can learn more about this caecilian. And we are going to set up for our next animal, and our educators will let us know when we're ready. Feel free to pop in any questions that you may have as well.
Okay, I think we are ready whenever you are.
Perfect.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. So our second animal today is going to be our American alligator. So pretty cool, right? So as you might be able to guess, this guy is still a juvenile. So this is Nash, our American alligator. He is about 5 years old, and he's been at the museum for about three and a half years now. And this is actually Nash's last show with us here at the museum. Nash came to us from New Hampshire. He was confiscated because he was being housed as a pet, which is illegal. So he was confiscated, and we offered to give him a home here at the museum until he can be moved to another institution. So he's actually, this is his last show, and he's going to be leaving us here within the next couple weeks. So American alligators are apex predators. They live in mainly in North America and kind of down into Mexico as well. So some really cool things that you can notice about Nash right away is he's covered in tiny bony plates. So these help protect him. Liz giving a really good shot right here. And if you were tuned into our last episode or our last program, you would have seen our armadillo, and they actually have this similar structure. It's a bony plate that protects their body. So one thing that's really cool about alligators is their teeth. So alligators have about 80 teeth at one time, but they're constantly using those teeth, right? They're predators, they're big carnivores. So those teeth are always falling out and they're replacing them with new ones. And normally people kind of think of it, oh, like a shark. And it is kind of like a shark, but they're like us and they have one row of teeth, unlike sharks who have several. So they just have teeth coming in underneath their old ones. And throughout their life, they go through about 30,000 teeth. That's a lot of teeth to go through. Pretty cool, right? So what is our difference between alligators and crocodiles? That's kind of a big question that we get. So alligators tend to have more of a U-shaped mouth, and you don't really see their teeth. As with crocodiles, they have a really pointy snout, and you can really see their teeth. You can kind of see some of Nash's right now. But when they're full grown, crocodiles will have that nice toothy grin, and alligators, when their mouth is closed, you won't be able to see it. So one of my favorite things about alligators is how they determine whether they're going to be a boy or a girl. So it's all dependent on the temperature of the nest. So when the mom goes and lays her eggs in her nest that she makes, depending on the temperature, that will determine the sex of the alligator, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to go ahead, because I'm sure there are tons of questions about Nash here. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over and see if we have any.
Yeah, our first question is, how old is Nash?
That's a great question. So he is about 5 years old.
Great. How did Nash get his name?
That's a great question. So he is named after Nashua, New Hampshire, where he was confiscated from.
Awesome. Let's see. Liliana wants to know, can alligators get sick?
That's actually a wonderful question. I don't know any alligator diseases off the top of my head, but I wouldn't be surprised. They're like other animals, and we can all get sick. So I'm sure that they do get sick. Alligators tend to be a little more sensitive to temperature, so that can affect them as well and cause them to act more lethargic or more normal. So that's a great question, though. I don't actually have a good answer for that.
Great. So Kira, age 8, wants to know if they have scales on their bellies too.
That's a wonderful question. So they do. They like to be armored and protected all over. So this is especially important for our baby alligators. So once they get to about Nash's size, the current size he is, they really don't have as many predators to worry about. But when they're babies, they have a lot more predators. Raccoons, birds, really anything that can get their hands on a baby alligator will try to eat it and do eat them. So, but as soon as they kind of hit Nash's size and get bigger, there's really no other animals that eat alligators. So they need those bony plates to protect them, especially when they're little. That's a great question.
Great. So we have some questions on why Nash is so calm right now. He is alive, right? Hanging out?
Yeah, so Nash is so calm because he's spent almost his entire life with humans. So he, was taken in as a pet. So he was around humans when he was really little, and we've worked with him here at the museum. So he's an ambassador animal. So this is his job. He's been trained to come out on programs and to participate. And he would let Liz know if he did not want to participate. But that's a great question. Just kind of like our other animals, we work really hard with our animals to make sure that they're choosing to come out on program and that it's safe for everyone.
Great. So this question is, how many babies can they have at once, and do they breed every year?
That's a great question. So they have about 50 eggs on average every year. Some females can lay up to 90, but on average it is about 50. And they can. So normally alligators will have their nest, their babies will come out, and they actually stick with mom for about 2 years. From 1 to 2 years, they hang out with mom, and mom will kind of protect them. They'll hang out in the same area. Then once they hit about 2 to 3 years old, they start to go out on their own, whether they venture to do that on their own or mom kind of kicks them out of her territory. So Alligators in general are solitary animals. There are some so males have a larger territory while females tend to have a little bit of a smaller territory and stick inside there. But she will eventually try to kick her babies out. It's a great question.
Great. So Abiyaha, Kalaya, and Emily want to know, what do they eat? Do they eat mice?
That's a great question. So here at the museum, Nash actually does get mice. In the wild, alligators are going to eat fish. They're going to eat other wildlife, pretty much anything that they can get their hands on. Reptiles, amphibians, birds, mammals, they pretty much eat everything. The only thing that adult alligators really don't eat much of is insects. But when they're babies, they tend to eat only insects. They eat a lot of insects when they're babies. So they pretty much eat everything.
Great. Lydia, age 4, wants to know how big he will get.
So alligators can get to be about 13 feet on average. I believe the world record for the largest alligator, I believe, was 19 and a half feet, which is a huge animal. On average, they weigh about 1,000 pounds, which is huge. So you can imagine Nash being full grown, weighing 1,000 pounds, would not be able to fit in Liz's hands. So that's one reason why Nash is going to a new institution, is because he has kind of reached his size capacity here at the museum.
Great. Someone wants to know why he isn't blinking.
That's a great question. So alligators, their eyes are a little bit different than ours, but they actually have 2 sets of eyelids. So they have eyelids similar to ours that go up and down. So if you look really close, you blink up and down. But he also has ones that go from the outside in, and those can be a little more translucent. But he's pretty much not blinking because he is the predator, needs to be aware of what is going on around him. So if you think about alligators, how they hang out in the water, that snout is going to be up above the water, and same with their eyes. They need to be alert at all times.
Anara, age 6, wants to know, what do they sound like?
Oh man, it's like a growl mixed with, that's such a great question. I don't know I would describe it as a growl. But mainly it's male alligators that make the noise, and they usually do it during breeding season to attract females. So normally they want to be really quiet because they need to, as a big animal, they need to sneak up on their prey. So they have to be pretty quiet, especially if you're 1,000 pounds, right? You want to be pretty silent. So really they make kind of like a growling noise that's very loud during breeding season. If there's lots of audio online, if you have the ability to Google alligator calls, you'll be able to hear them. They're pretty cool.
Very cool. Titan wants to know if he's related to a T-Rex.
Wonderful question. So reptiles, so our alligators here, their closest relatives are birds. So a lot has been discovered about dinosaurs recently in the last decade or so, that dinosaurs are more closely related to birds than they are to reptiles. So they're all related, but a little bit more distant than we thought.
Very cool. All right. Someone wants to know how big his teeth are.
That's a great question. Nash's teeth are probably, if I had to guess, because we don't measure them, I don't think he would love that if we did that. They're probably about 1/2 inch right now. Maybe a little smaller than 1/2 inch.
Cool. So someone wants to know why he's breathing so fast. Maybe how they breathe. We can talk about that.
Yeah, so you're kind of seeing his neck go in and out and breathing. That's just his normal breathing. Some animals, breathe a little harder and a little faster than other animals. So yeah, you can see his throat moving in and out there. And actually it looks like he kind of stopped doing it really quick. But yeah, that's just his normal breathing.
Awesome. Someone says, Liz, thank you for handling Nash. It's truly impressive.
It is, right? So as you can tell, Nash and Liz have a really special relationship. They've worked together since he came in. Nash is target trained. So he is trained to touch a target or move to where the target is, and then he receives a reward. So Liz and Nash have spent these past 3.5 years working really closely together. And you can tell with how calm he is that they have a very special bond.
Awesome. What does Nash do for fun?
What a wonderful question. So Nash has a couple different areas in his enclosure that he can hang out. He likes to swim. One of his favorite things to do is bask. So he'll sit up on his the dry area of his enclosure and kind of bask under the light.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think that we are out of time for today. So I want you to wave goodbye and say goodbye to our American alligator, Nash. All right. And while we say goodbye, we'll put up this slide for more information about Nash and the American alligator. Feel free to take a screenshot of this or take a picture of it to learn a little bit more about them. So thank you all so much for participating in today's live animal show. If you would like to see more programs, you can head to www.mos.org/MOS at home. We will be doing live animal again next Friday at 1 p.m. So thank you so much. If you liked this program today, please feel free to support the museum by visiting engage.mos.org/welcome. So I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their day and a great weekend. Thank you so much.